In the first of our Browns mock draft series, we're going to look at one of the top positional needs for the Browns. And that's the edge rusher, someone that, or a position that we could still improve upon after free agency. And we're going to look at a head-to-head matchup of two players that will likely be around when the Browns are picking number 26 in the first round. Those two players are Jaelan Phillips out of the University of Miami of Florida, not Miami University,
not the real Miami.
And then he's going to be competing against Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia. So two great prospects in the draft, probably going to be around. They could be a little bit sooner, could be a little bit after, but they'll be in the Browns territory for edge rusher. So Eric, let's go to you first here. How would you pick apart both of these prospects, and who do the Browns walk away with?
Okay, so let's look at the tail of the tape. You got Jaelan Phillips, 6'5", 266. He's played 3 years. 2 of them were at UCLA. One of them was 6 games. He had 3.5 sacks. One he had 4 games at a sack. He transferred in 2019, so he had to sit that year out. This 2020, he had 8 sacks in 10 games, 45 total tackles over that time period this past year. You take a look at his pro day. He ran a 4.56. Those are all the positives. I mean, you've seen his plays. If you want to go on YouTube and look at him, he's really explosive off the edge. Whether that's a run play, end arounds, he's stopping those immediately. Whether he's rushing quarterbacks. Obviously, the negatives, he retired, then unretired at UCLA due to ankle injuries and concussions, which is pretty alarming at a 19, 20, 21-year-old age. So I'm not a doctor. I've told you that many times before.
On a podcast, though.
Right. So I honestly don't know how extreme those injuries were, but obviously I don't know if it was just one concussion or multiple concussions, but that's part of his makeup. Azeez Ojulari, 6'3", 240, a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter. Also played 3 years. He pretty much redshirted his first year, only played 2 games, only had 31 total tackles this past year, but he leaped from 5.5 to 9.5 sacks in a decrease of games from 11 to 10 from 2019 to 2020. Also had 4 forced fumbles, which was, not normally one of the main stats that people look at, but hey, that's, if you can force turnovers, that's excellent outside of sacks. He ran a 4.6 in his pro day. Did tear his ACL, but that was back in high school, which probably led to his redshirt freshman season. So, looking at the two, if the Browns were on the clock and they needed an edge rusher and all the other ones were gone that were options between the two, you look at Phillips needs to stay healthy versus Azeez needs to bulk up. I think, you could take a guy who needs to just bulk up, and I think it will be good with him. Phillips, I mean, he's got the size, but I just worry so much about his injury history. So that's the way I'd be leaning towards.
Drew, who are you taking?
I'm taking Azeez Ojulari. Azeez Ojulari is my number 1 pass rusher, bar none.
Nice.
He's the only person that has just elite level hands. He has elite level production, speed, bend. He has counter moves. He has counters to his counters. He can beat you inside. He can beat you with a spin move. I've seen him beat people with a bull rush, even though that's not his forte. You look at what he did against Alex Leatherwood. That's a first-round tackle from Alabama that he just abused. He was the only reason Georgia was even in that SEC championship game. He single-handedly won them the New Year's Six Bowl against Cincinnati. They would have absolutely lost if it wasn't for him. He was hands down the best player on the field. He is the number one pass rusher on my board. He's ahead of guys that we didn't even talk about. Kwity Paye from Michigan, Jason Owa from Penn State. He is ahead of those guys on my board. He is the number one edge rusher. I would be absolutely thrilled if the Cleveland Browns drafted him at 26 overall. As for the next player on this sort of comparison, I'm going to borrow a phrase that we remember fondly from 3 years ago. Undraftable. Undraftable. You cannot walk away with Jaelan Phillips as your first round pick. It simply cannot be done. He medically retired at UCLA. It was because of concussions. He has had multiple concussions. It is just that is not something that you can mess with. I hate it for him. I want him to sign that big contract. I want him to make good. I want him to be paid. He deserves it athletically, but you cannot take that risk medically with that prospect in that first round. If he's available sometime in round 3 and you want to start gambling on it, fine. But you cannot walk away with this draft, as important as it is to find a difference maker on the defensive end. You cannot, not the defensive end position, but the defensive end of the team. You cannot walk away with Jaelan Phillips as your first round pick and be confident in it.
There's one path that could be Warren Sapp, and there's one path that could be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So Jaelan Phillips, don't worry. If it all doesn't work out in the NFL, there could still be the XFL.
Ronnie Perkins, Oklahoma, second round sleeper.